Okay, folks, today is simple interest. And I could go on about simple interest for a long time, but I'll try to keep it short and sweet today. You can see I've got some credit cards I pulled out of my wallet. Credit cards is usually what we think about when we think about simple interest, but credit card is not the only thing that deals with interest. If you buy a car, you have to pay interest. If you buy a house, you have to pay interest. That is, unless you have the money up front for it, which most people do not have that much money and will have to pay some interest. You also get paid interest if you put money in the bank or invest or that kind of thing. So interest is not something you always have to pay. It is something that you could earn depending on what you do with your money. So when you turn 18, this is my one soapbox for today. When you turn 18, you're going to get lots of these in the mail, and they will get you in trouble really, really quickly, because when you're 18, you get excited and you want to use all this money, but it's easy to use it and hard to pay it back. So I'm going to quit with that. If you want to ask your parents more about it, I'm sure they can tell you about credit cards and interest and getting in trouble if you don't use it wisely. If you use it wisely, it's a great thing, but if you don't use it wisely, it can get you in a mess. Okay, so here's how it works. We have a formula, and the formula is I, which stands for interest, equals principal, which is the amount of money that we use, times the rate, and the rate is the percent that we have to pay, and then you have the time, and time is supposed to be years. So pretty easy formula there. So interest equals principal times rate times time. There are a few little tricks we have to remember. So the principal, in this case, we're buying a car. So we have $18,000. Now the rate, we don't put 6%. We have to change that to a decimal. So remember, we can either divide it by 100 or move that decimal back 2 times. We would have to add a 0, so 0.06. And then the time is 4 years, so then we just put our 4 in there. So if we multiply all of these numbers together, we get 18,000 times 0.06 times 4. And you're probably looking at thinking, oh wow, $4,000, if we're talking about money, $4,320. That is just the interest. So if you borrowed this money from a bank, you have to pay them back the $18,000, plus you have to pay them the interest. So really, if you were looking at the total that you had to pay for that car, you have to pay real close attention to the question and what it asks for. The total, we would add these two together. So that car would really cost you $22,320. This is the price of the car, and this is the interest. So you would have to pay both parts. Okay, let's say you wanted a four-wheeler, and we've got principal times rate times time. Now the principal's not talking about Miss Wallace, it's talking about the amount of money. So here's the 5,000 times the rate. Now again, remember, we have to move that decimal 2 times to the left or divide it by 100, and this time we get 0.065 times 2. So we paid that four-wheeler off a little quicker. So we've got 5,000 times 0.065 times 2. So $650 is the amount of interest. So we would pay $5,000 for the four-wheeler, and then $650 would be the interest that we would pay for whoever we borrowed the money from. Okay, so now let's say that we're going to pay on our Belks credit card. Now most of the time, credit cards have a pretty high interest rate, so you know that 29 is higher than normal, the other rates that I've used. So principal times rate times time, so $750 times the rate. I'm going to move that decimal back 2 times. If you don't see a decimal, it's understood to be at the end. So 0.29 times, now this time it says months and not years. So what I think is the easiest thing to do is just put 16 over 12, because there's 12 months in a year. So if we do 16 over 12, that will automatically change it to years for us. So we didn't have as much money borrowed, so we paid it off quicker. So $750 times 0.29 times 16. Then we hit that ABC button for a fraction. And so that interest is going to be $290. So that means over the course of 6 months, I would have to pay Belks the $750 that I used, and I would have to pay them the interest. That's how credit card companies make their money, paying on the interest that you pay. That's how they make their money. So I would have to give them this for using their money plus what I borrowed. All right, so now we're going to do some word problems. And I made these a little bit trickier. We're going to have to work backwards to answer these. We've got Braylon paid $600 in interest on a loan for $8,000. He paid it off in 2 years. What is the rate? Well, this is not a regular problem. So let's look at what we've got. Interest equals principal times rate times time. Well, it said we paid $600 in interest. Okay, already I noticed that this is different because earlier I was solving for I, so I know I've got to do some backwards work going on here. So here's $8,000 is my principal, how much I borrow. The rate, well, the question says, what is the rate? So this I don't know, so I'm just going to leave it at R. And then it says in 2 years. So this looks kind of funny. I do know that I can multiply 8,000 times 2. Well, that's going to give me 16,000 times R. So I've combined my like terms. I've put those two things together. And then I get 600 equals. Well, we've done these equations before, but that looks backwards. Remember I said I could take that equals 600 and just put it over here, just so we don't make a mistake. So now I'm going to divide both sides by 1,600. And R equals, I've got 600 divided by 16,000. And I get 0.0375. So that is my rate, is 0.0375. So we had to work it backwards. So y'all can tell I'm at school. We got announcements going on this morning. So if I wanted to double check it, I could always put my rate back in and make sure that it gives me the 600. Now, if I actually asked for what was the percent, I could move that decimal 2 times and I could say I paid 3.75%. But to work it back in the problem, I could put this number back in. So let's try that real quickly. Let's take this 8,000 times, and let's put this 0.0375 times, and then it was 2. And I hope I get 600. And I do, so I know that I did that problem correctly. So there's always a way to double check it, which is nice. Okay? So now it looks like we got Belinda paid $1,500 in interest on her car. She paid it off in 4 years. Her interest rate was 5%. What was her principal? So her principal means we want to know how much did she actually pay for this car. So interest equals principal times rate times time. Let's go in and fill in what we know. This says interest. Principal we don't know. I'm going to leave it a P. Now remember, we have to take this. If we don't see a decimal, it's understood to be here. We move it backwards. So I'm going to put 0.05, and then the time it said was 4 years. So we can put together these two pieces this time because we know we're really multiplying all this stuff together. So this would give us 0.2, I do believe, 0.5 times 4. Not trusting my brain this morning, that's right. So 0.2, and then I'm going to put this P behind it because it would look funny to put P and then a 0.2. And then I've got 1,500. Well, we're going to do just like we did last time, and that 1,500 looks funny there to me. So I'm going to move it over here. So 1,500 divided by 0.2. So that car actually cost $7,500. And if I wanted to check this and make sure it's right, I could take this $7,500, then times 0.05, and then times my 4 and make sure it works and gives me back my $1,500. So then times 0.05 times 4, and I do get my 1,500, so I know I solved it right. So lots of things we can do with interest. Remember, when you borrow the money, you have to pay the interest. If you put money in the bank or invest it or let somebody else borrow money and you charge them interest, then you would make the money. So remember, if you don't learn anything else this year, on a credit card, be super, super careful, because you could end up getting yourself in a financial mess if you have to pay back lots of money that you don't have, and then you ruin your credit, and then it's just a kind of a domino effect. But I'll get off that soapbox for now. So y'all have a great day, and remember, text me if you got questions, or email me, or call me.